Hi, welcome to MediatorPodcast.com, a podcast and video series about mediation, negotiation, and collaboration. My name is Melissa Gragg, and I provide online valuation, divorce, and mediation services in St. Louis, Missouri. Today we'll discuss forensic psychology and mediation with Shari Belitz. Shari is an attorney as well as a trial, jury, and litigation consultant in New York. She also owns an educational company that teaches psychology to litigators. Welcome, Shari. How are you?
I'm doing great. Nice to be here, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
That gets us to a little bit about what is cognitive bias, because I don't know, I had to kind of make sure I understood what it was too. And I think we understand it conceptually, but we may not understand the words, right? We may not have heard it be called this. And so can you kind of break it down a little bit of what this is?
Absolutely. And I agree. It's such an intimidating, psychologically loaded term. But cognitive bias is really just how our brains are operating every day. Our brains are wired to take shortcuts, and cognitive biases are mental shortcuts. Sometimes we refer to it as heuristics in psychology. And our brains use all sorts of shortcuts so they don't have to go through that logical, rational process, because that's long and that takes time and that takes mental gymnastics. And this is really very anthropological in nature. It was the brain's way of making snap decisions, very fight or flight, very anthropological, really for survival and to kind of understand the chaotic, complex world we're in. So when we talk about cognitive biases, and I'm going to throw one out right now, it's one of my favorite biases to talk about in the context of litigation, is confirmation bias. Because this is a bias, we hear about this a lot because it relates to politics, it relates to the news, it relates to everything. But we hear about confirmation bias because it is truly the advocate's bias. I call it the advocate's bias. And it is, and what I tell my clients is, don't fall in love with your case. It is overweighting your case, your facts, your defense. I say defenses because I mostly work with defense attorneys, while really disregarding or dismissing the strengths of the other side. And one of the ways that jury research exercises, such as mock trials, focus groups, perception studies come into play is they help to defeat the confirmation bias of the advocate. And it's a completely normal bias. I shouldn't say normal, who wants to use the word normal in psychology, but it's a completely relatable bias to have confirmation bias as an advocate, because from the second you get the pleadings, from the second you, whether you're filing the complaint, whether you're answering the complaint, when you're answering discovery, when you're taking depositions, arguing motions, you need to have your zealous advocate's hat on. And it's a little bit hard to kind of remove that zealous advocate's hat, and you start to really buy into your case. And it's important to get a neutral perspective on your case in order to properly evaluate it and get the best possible outcome, whether that's something that is a fruitful, productive settlement, or whether it is knowing when and how to go to trial.
Well, and I think that's very interesting, because it was always a little, I do a lot of partner disputes and divorce, and I would see the attorneys get very emotional, right? And very passionate about it. But there was nobody else there. It was just me, the client, and the attorney. So I'm like, why are you getting so passionate and emotional when there's no audience? We're not on performance mode. And as an expert witness, we train to be neutral, right? We train to almost have this semi permanent wall around our emotions and the numbers, right? They're just numbers. What do the numbers tell me? And I try not to get into the emotional. So that was always confusing for me. But that's basically what you're talking about, is they get so entrenched in that case as if it is their own, right?
I think entrenched is the perfect word because that's what it is. You're living your case. And I remember early on in my career, I represented insurance companies, and I remember arguing that first motion. And I was arguing with such passion for this insurance company that I think the judge was kind of like, whoa, this is an insurance company versus a bank. Like, who cares? But you really, you have a job to do. And in order to do it well, that's what you're doing, but it's often at the detriment of a neutral evaluation. So yes, you're entrenched. I think that's the perfect way to put it.
Do you think that any of that, like, because it's more unconscious, well, it's not unconscious, but it's more just like a habit. Do you think that that contributes to some burnout in attorneys, that they get too far kind of overwhelmed or enthralled in those cases, that it and then if something goes wonky, because you can't control the clients. Like sometimes clients will lie to you. Sometimes things will come out on the stand that, shift the case. But do you think that that contributes to any burnout with attorneys?
I do. I think there are a lot of things that contribute to attorney burnout, but certainly that entrenched advocacy is one of the contributing factors. That's my belief. Whether you're working on really personal cases, like you're a plaintiff's med mal attorney, and you see a lot of like really injured plaintiffs, or you're working in family law, or you're working really with people that can absolutely lead to an emotional burnout, as we see in other professions. Then there's some of that more detached kind of work, like let's take, for example, a patent case. Like no one's like really getting so emotionally charged up necessarily about a patent case, which is like a little more removed than maybe, a custody case or something like that. But you really think of any other profession that has an equally smart, prepared professional really shooting down all of your work that you're doing. Like, can you picture a surgeon with another surgeon standing over that first surgeon? No, I don't like the way you made that cut. You made the cut far to the left. You should have made it more to the right. Oh, you're really going to do it that way? I don't think that's too effective. So I think that's another, just kind of that zealous advocacy, and having an equally zealous advocate constantly checking and balancing you, is something that can lead to burnout, though that's not my area of expertise. No. So that's just my take. Experience.
Yeah, I just think I think if you're in this realm, either in litigation, mediation, expert witness, attorney, I think that you do have to be aware of kind of preserving your own energy and your own emotions, because that is key to kind of longevity in this arena.